So in the last two lectures, we have talked about the road to World War I and the alliance system, some of the weapons, militarism, all those causes. Now we're going to talk about how the war was actually fought. You know, most of the war was fought in trenches, but we're going to expand on that, especially once America got in the war. In America, we knew we were getting in the war, and like we said last lecture, we were preparing, we were training soldiers. But after the sinking of the Lusitania and the sinking of more ships, when Congress actually declared war, we had to find someone to lead our troops into Europe, and this was General Pershing. He brought about 14,000 men to Europe, and once he got to Europe, Pershing knew he didn't want Americans to fight out of trenches. He also knew that 14,000 wasn't going to do anything, so he sent back a request to the United States for 3 million more if he really wanted to impact this war and win it. So Congress passed the draft, known as the Selective Service Act, and that created a pool of 24 million soldiers, 3 million taken out, and those 3 million that were taken out were sent in the first wave to Europe, and they were called the AEF, the American Expeditionary Force. These were the soldiers who were going to turn the tide of the war for the good guys, for the Allies. One of the problems was, since we didn't have anything to combat the U-boats, the submarines that the Germans had, we had to create a system to get our troops over to Europe without getting sunk. That system is called the convoy system, where if you look at the picture in the lower right, you have a troop transport, like this big, huge ship in the lower right, and surrounding it all the way to Europe, you have military ships that are armed and ready to defend it. And that system worked so well that the U-boats couldn't get close to the troop transports and did not sink any, and none of our soldiers, who were known as doughboys, actually died on the way to Europe. Our military during World War I was segregated, and not very many African Americans saw action during this war. Most African Americans who served in the Army were doing things like building roads, cutting down trees, cooking, that kind of thing. Russia, after it had its revolution, it actually didn't want to take part in the war anymore, backed out of its treaty with England and France, and made peace with Germany and took itself out of the war. And that changed the dynamics of the war. No longer did Germany have to fight east to Russia and west to England, America, and France. It could focus all of its machinery of war on the Americans, the French, and the English. And really, for us, 3 million new American bodies to fight in the war arrived just in time. General Pershing said we dig no trenches to fall back on. He defended Paris when the Germans moved towards Paris, and he began to push the Germans back to Germany. England was the largest manufacturer of tanks during World War I, and we used these to great effect as we looked in the film clip Monday and Tuesday. Tanks were able to bust through no man's land. They were also able to go over German trenches, and we used them at great advantage during the Battle of Amiens, and this is really the big turning point of the war, a huge battle where we overran in a matter of minutes using tanks the Germans' trenches and began to push them back. And that really foretold the Germany was trying to catch up with technology. They wouldn't have this problem during World War II. They did have this problem in World War I. Before long, the German army was pushed out of France, was being pushed back into Germany. The Americans were on the move. The Americans, the French, and the English were on the move. Remember, the Americans were pulling just from America, their soldiers. The English were able to pull soldiers from Canada and Australia and India, so it was a real global army. But the French and Americans pretty much were just using soldiers from their countries. The Allies, once they had pushed the Germans back into Germany, they wanted an unconditional surrender, which means that the Germans would have no say in the conditions of the surrender at the end of the war. This had to be accepted eventually by the Germans, and it would really be one of the main causes of World War II, which I'm sure you all studied last year too. This will be the end of part 1. We'll finish part 2 in a second.